Do you want to say something? Start in a minute. Sure.
Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just about a minute here, so hang tight. Okay, let's get started, guys. Welcome to our webinar, Internet Hygiene for Individuals, or we like to call How to Protect Yourself and Your Identity Online. Before we begin, let's go over some basic housekeeping. We're sensitive to your time and are aiming to bring this in at or around 45 to 50 minutes. Depending on the Q&A, we'll definitely bring it in by noon. While your individual phone lines are muted, if you have any questions along the way, simply click on the raise hand icon and type in your question, and we'll do our best to address it quickly. So that said, let me introduce you to today's speakers and give you a little background about us. My name is Bob Niekamp, and my primary responsibilities include managing our vendor relations, staff certification, and training program. In addition, I've been at FPA for a number of years now, more recently on the role of determining and defining our cybersecurity solution packages. Craig Pollock is the founder and CEO of FPA. He's been working in IT consulting with clients, developing software, implementing solutions, and managing technology for small to mid-sized businesses for over 25 years now. With a degree in computer science, specifically application development, he began as a software engineer developing financial and accounting systems, while over the years growing FPA into one of the most respected IT service providers in LA. While running FPA, he also acts as the outsourced or virtual CIO or CTO for a select group of clients. His knowledge and experience is one of the reasons FPA specializes in the investment advisor, CPA, and manufacturer distributor vertical markets. He's active in the industry, speaks at industry events, and has been on a number of podcasts and has a number of articles published. Now let me give you a little background about FPA. We've been in business for over 27 years and have approximately 25 employees. We have our own dedicated network operations center, or NOC, where we run our clients' networks from. One of our mantras is business before technology. To us, this means we focus on the business aspects and the value proposition technology brings to our clients' businesses. It's not about technology for technology's sake. We really believe in our core values, and our core value number one is simple: take care of the client. We believe that if we're doing this, everything else will fall into place. We truly believe that IT has been shortchanged for far too long. To us, IT, the way it's supposed to be, means delivering high-quality, timely, and cost-effective IT services for our clients. This may seem like a marketing tagline, but we believe that for far too long, mediocre IT has become the norm. We really do believe that high-quality IT adds to the success and ultimately the value of business. And our goal is to deliver on this promise. FPA works with a number of clients in the greater Los Angeles area, but specializes in working with registered investment advisors, CPAs and business managers, and manufacturers and distributors. We have clients who we started with when we opened our door 28 years ago, as well as clients we got last month. Beyond our technical expertise, our systems and processes, our methodologies, and our incredible staff, we believe that our success is all about the how in what we do. And providing learning opportunities like this webinar only helps to add value to our clients. All that being said, let's dive in and talk about what you should know to protect yourself while working online.
Thanks, Bob. That was a nice intro. Hopefully everybody's still with us. So let's dive in. Real easy question to start off with. Who here has ever used the internet? kind of a silly question considering you're all online right now watching a webinar. But the point is this has become more ubiquitous, right? This is just second nature to us all now. It's working online. But I think for some of us older folks, and I'm including myself in that, how people view security and privacy is different now than how it used to be. And I think that we're starting to see the end result of all of these things. And to us, as IT technology professionals, it's real easy to see these things kind of sloughed off, and you're thinking about the end result of what do I need to get done, how do I use the internet, how do I work, how do I browse, how do I get to wherever I want to get to. And that almost always seems to supersede security and privacy. And so, again, I think what can we do in our own right to make sure that we're secure online as best we can and protect our information as best we can? And there's a number of things that we can do to do that, and that's what we're hoping to share with you today. So what does it look like out there? What's going on? A lot of scary stuff if you've been reading the headlines, right? So over 21 million Americans had their Social Security numbers breached. They're stolen online from the OPM's database, the operations, forgot what that was, public mandate, something like that. Where are we at? Hackers have stolen over 100,000 taxpayer information from the IRS website, so the government's not secure. Institutions like UCLA Hospital, their network was accessing sensitive PII or personal identifiable information, 4.5 million people just from our private entity. And then you look at some of the bigger, more substantial breaches in recent years, right? Facebook lost 87 million records, Uber 57 million, and Yahoo with a whopping 200 million records. So that's crazy in terms of the amount of information that's being breached and getting out there. And the thing is all of our usernames and passwords are out there. So what are we doing to stay ahead of that game? Bob, you were going to jump in on something?
Well, I was just going to say is that it's important to note that it's across the board there. It's not one single, the private sector that's getting hit. It's not the public sector that's getting hit. We're talking across the board. Everyone who uses the internet is at risk, and it just goes to show our government, if they can't get their hands around this, then that means that we really need to start taking a proactive look into what we're doing.
Right, and that all comes back to what we like to call, internet hygiene, how we're working on the internet as an individual. What are we doing to protect ourselves? So, again, ransomware is a $7 billion criminal business in 2018, and it's growing. CEO fraud, right, business email compromise has caused over $5 billion in damages annually. And 91% of successful data breaches, it's been noted, are started with a spear phishing attack. So what does that mean? That means more often than not, it's not some nefarious character out in the Ukraine, and nothing against the Ukraine, but some nefarious country looking to attack you. It's email, it's people clicking on things that they shouldn't be clicking on. It's people not being aware as they just work in their day-to-day. So that's kind of the big takeaway, is it's really about what can we do to protect ourselves. So what does this mean? Well, cyber threats are on the rise, growing by 11% every year. More of our information is on the dark web, making social engineering that much easier. That's why spear phishing emails are working so well now, because people can send you an email and say, hey, Craig, at cp@fpainc.com, we have your password, and they send an old password. We know what you've been doing, pay us, or we're going to release stuff. So there's a boatload of your information out there, and the issue sometimes isn't just about what can they do with that out there, what can they do with that with other systems, but what can they do with you to trick you into getting more information, or to trick you into some sort of financial ransom attack. Which is my point about social engineering. It's all about how do they take advantage of this information and our approach. So if we're not looking at how we're working on the internet from a defensive posture, more often than not, we're going to get taken. So the security risk has increased because of more flexible and mobile access to information, meaning as we work more and more on our phones and our tablets, it just becomes murkier and murkier where our information is, how we log in, how all of these devices are secure. It used to be if we were only connected to a hardwired network connection, and that was our wire out to the internet, and that's protected through our antivirus system and our internet threat protection and our firewall. It's real easy from an IT perspective and from a business perspective to control access and control the impact. But as we become more and more mobile, and we're addressing or accessing the internet and accessing all different sites, whether it's through a browser or through an app or through some other means, it just gets murkier and murkier in terms of how we protect ourselves through all these different internet connections.
I think it's important, too, to note that the end user is always a major player in the cybersecurity incident. You know, people want to believe that they don't interact and they don't cause these issues, but the truth is the end user is always involved, and I think we're getting to a point now where we're recognizing this, but the truth is in 5 to 10 years from now, this will just be on everyone's average daily life, you know, and so now we just need to get out there and realize that the human aspect of this is really important to it, and keeping that up to date.
And I think that ties in nicely with this next line here, where we say, as humans, we want an easy answer, right? We just want things to be fixed. Tell me how to fix it. What's the technology that'll fix it? And the reality is there really is no easy answer. The easy answer is protect yourself, learn as much as you can, make sure that you have really clean, again, proper hygiene on the internet. But the biggest risk that we seem to be facing these days really is tied to this, which is user apathy. I'm not going to say that people don't care, but we've almost become sort of cold and impervious to this. And you know, the more that we hear about it, the more we kind of just shrug it off and say, well, that's just the landscape, rather than saying, okay, well, what does it mean, and what are those things that we can do to protect ourselves to really, you know, get a step ahead of this. And they're not difficult, and there's not a lot, but it is, you know, taking a proactive stance in terms of how we work on the internet. So why is that, right? So what are some of the threats that we face out there? Why isn't this an easy answer? Well, first we have viruses and malware. We've got ransomware, phishing, CEO fraud, hacking, breaches, brute force attacks, right? DDoS, which is denial of service attacks on your servers, on your workstation, on your firewall, you know, just overload, brute force attacks to overload what's going on with your network. Dealing with third-party conduits, and, you know, when you have a connection from a third party or into a third party, what does that look like, and how is that protected? Other threats include, you know, just simply losing your computer, losing your phone. What happens when that happens? What happens when data gets stolen? Whether it's your data or data that you happen to be a part of, right? So for LinkedIn, if that information gets breached, if you're a Yahoo user, if you're on UCLA's medical records and they got breached, what happens to all that information, and how does that impact your life and your internet, lifestyle, so to speak? Then you have this crazy concept out there now called IoT, the Internet of Things, and this is really throwing a whole new twist on everything. So to kind of shed a little light on this and sidetrack for just a second, we've got this new concept out there called the Internet of Things. And what that means is having these new devices, whatever they might be, connected to the internet. What does that mean to you as an end user? Again, most people just slough this concept off and don't really think about it. But as an example, if you're running something like a Ring doorbell, right, or your Nest, and you have a Nest thermometer, any device that you've added to your home or any other location that you have access to an app, that takes up an IP address on your network. That's now a device, that's an internet-ready device that's on your network. Well, guess what? Every time you connect that up to your network, you add that device has an administrator user and a password associated with that. And when you add that device to your network, that username and password is the default one that the company has set up. Now, guess what? Everybody who's a hacker on the dark web knows that administrator name and that password, because people don't change those things when they add the device to their network. So now what happens? Well, now you have an open port, an open IP address that people can get into, and they're just out there pinging. They're not looking for your network. They're just looking for openings. So what happens is every time you add something like this, you just make your network that much less safe. So again, these are just more, it's just added complexity that we're adding exponential opportunities to reduce the security around whether it's your home network, your device, connecting into your office computer, anything that's going on. We're now just creating this sort of new landscape, again, that most people aren't aware of. And so my point isn't to say, hey, go home and lock all these things down, although you should. My point is, what can we be doing on the back end as just end users to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, because there are all these new openings and all these new different ways of being exposed. Then you have the layer of the dark web, and lastly, cyber terrorism, right? So there's this whole plethora of threats out there that we're working through. And this is all new, and this is, this whole thing is new for civilization as we think about it, right? The iPhone is only 10 years old, and, tablets are younger than that, newer than that. So this is a whole new landscape, they say, right, a whole new brave world that we're living in. And the industry is trying to figure it out. Civilization is trying to figure it out. Society, governments, we're all trying to figure out, how do we run this? How do we regulate this? How do we control this? And how do we protect this? So again, what can we be doing as individuals to make sure that we're ahead of all of this? So speaking of the dark web, what is the dark web, right? Because we talk about it, and I think some people have heard about it. So the dark web is a place, quote unquote, a place on the internet. We're all pretty familiar with typing in www.whatever.com or whatever.tv or whatever.net. The dark web is just another place underneath that you can't get to through regular browsers. You need another way to get to it. But the whole infrastructure is out there. And what does it mean? It means that there's all sorts of nefarious transactions and data and information and characters out there that have a way now to meet and talk and share information and share financial transactions that are totally unregulated and no way to control. So they say that some estimate the dark web as 90% of all content on the web. Again, it's primarily used for covert and illegal opportunities. It presents anonymity, so people don't know anything about, any of the characters that are out there. You need an anonymous browser to make it work. There are secret search engines. Everything that you could possibly think in the most dark and evil way is out there. It's really, really crazy what's out there. And literally, there's no way for our governments to control this. As soon as they shut down one site, 5 other ones pop up. So, scary times that we live in. There are hidden wikis, hidden chat rooms, and they pay through Bitcoins, right? So out of all of this, seems very, very negative. The third point, the anonymity, it is one of the advantages for repressive societies, countries that, that we would say are the evil axis, countries that are very repressed. This is a way for people to talk about things that their governments can't control. So there are some positives to it, but relatively speaking, there's a lot of negatives to the dark web. So it's just a place to be aware of that goes on. That being said, why does it matter? Well, it is one of the greatest sources of information to initiate a cyber attack. That's where everything ends up. Every attack, every data breach that you hear of, LinkedIn, Yahoo, Target, credit cards, UCLA, anywhere that's been breached, that information ultimately ends up on the dark web that people either give out for free or sell. And so all of that information about you is out there. And the thing is once it's out there, you can't take it back. Right? These are the lessons that we're teaching our kids. Whatever you post out there is there. You might think that you've pulled it down, but it still resides someplace on some server that's made copies of it. So some have estimates of over 4 billion email account credentials and over 85 million stolen PII records. PII, again, being personal identifiable information. So information about you, whether it's a health record, a social security number, a credit card number, driver's license, all of that information is on sale on the dark web. So again, what's our biggest risk? User apathy. Because all of this information just sounds like, oh my God, it's so daunting. Well, let's just not even deal with it. I'll just move on and keep doing it because it doesn't matter. And again, I think that's the attitude. That's not what I'm preaching. I'm not preaching it doesn't matter. What I'm preaching is it's out there, so what else can we be doing to make sure we stay ahead of it? Right? And that kind of leads to this conversation around what does user apathy look like, right? And this is the one, I would say, almost the most frustrating thing that I hear when we talk about cybersecurity with clients and others is no one wants my information. And if that's the mindset that we have out there, we're going to get dinged. We're going to get hit. Something's going to happen. And I'm not saying that there are people out there who want your information, because the reality is no one wants your information. That's not what it's about. It's about what can they do if they have your information, whether it's pinging you for some sort of ransom, getting you to click on something and infecting your systems, taking over your systems and using the resources, stealing your identity, and which is just hell to fix, leveraging your platforms to go and hack somebody else, and then ultimately you're responsible for that, which is one of the things that, again, looking at it from a business perspective, what are you doing from a business perspective to ensure that your business stays secure? And I don't necessarily mean cyber secure, but if somebody leverages your network and goes and hacks somebody else, you may now be responsible for that. And if you don't have the right protection around that, they could shut down your business just from the liability and the lawsuits and everything else related to that. And again, you may say, well, that's a pretty low risk. The reality is it happens. It happens way more often than you think it happens. And it probably happens more often than, some other natural disaster that we prepare for, whether that's fire, flood, earthquake, tornadoes, wherever you happen to live. These things are going to continue to happen more and more and more. And if we don't take it seriously, we're not doing our due diligence as a trusted advisor to ensure that our clients' businesses stay safe. And again, when I say stay safe, I'm talking about the business entity from a legal perspective.
I think that's a great point, Craig, too, is it's not necessarily that the hackers want your information, but they want what you have access to. If you're a small company, you might think, okay, we only have 3 or 4 employees, our information isn't that important, but your client's information is, and everything on your network that they would gain information from is very important. And so it's not just watching out for yourself, but it's what you have access to and the dominoes that could potentially fall if they gained access just to you.
So that being said, so let's dive in now. Have we scared you enough? Hopefully not. Hopefully, the purpose of this webinar is not to sit here and throw a bunch of statistics at you and say, oh my God, look how horrible everything is. But it is to paint a picture of this is the landscape that we're living in these days. There's a lot of different entry points. There's a lot of different types of threats. There isn't one thing. Again, our human brains like to simplistically come to some solution and say, okay, if I implement X, I'll be cool. There isn't one thing that we can do. There are multiple things, and so we need to attack it in that fashion. So what does that look like? What are those things that we can do to protect ourselves? So we've come up with 10 ways, again, as an individual, as an end user, browsing the internet, working on the internet, what can we be doing to better protect ourselves on a day-to-day basis? What are those things that as individuals, as IT professionals, this is just second nature for Bob and I, right, and all of our staff here. This really is how we live our lives. This is how we try to preach these things to the people that we care about and the people that we talk to on a daily basis. And these are the things that we think everybody should really be thinking about as they're working online. So let's start with the simplest one and go from there, right? 10 ways to stay safe online. Number 1, keep your systems up to date. Seems real easy. Without having, again, from a business perspective, the right partner in place to make sure your systems are all getting updated, patched regularly and consistently, it's a difficult thing. But as a home user, it's really important to stay up to date with your antivirus, your anti-spam, your firewalls, your operating system patches for your browser, patches for Office, patches for Acrobat, Java, all of those sorts of things. All of those things present entry points. So the more that you keep everything up to date, the tighter your systems are going to be. Second to that, we've got don't click on links in emails. Seems really second nature, but almost every single one. Most of our clients, or I can't even remember when the last time our client got infected with a ransomware. However, we have seen clients who get who have gotten hit with CEO fraud, and more often than not, it's because they click on a link. 99.9% of the time, spear phishing is the driver. As we said in an earlier slide, people tend to think, oh, let me just click on this link and see what happens. And the easiest way is just to hover over that link. And if what you hover and see doesn't match what is there, odds are do not click on that link. Right? It's real easy. So oftentimes one of the things that I do is if I'm not sure about what I'm clicking on, I'll hover over the link, make sure that those two links make sense. Even then, I may cut and paste, take that link, rather than clicking on the link in the email, I'll go to our browser and I'll type in that link manually and then see where that goes. So I'm not using the system, because oftentimes there's code written in there that's going to go run something else, and that's the problem. So be really aware of what you're clicking on in an email. It's real easy to say don't click, but even then, there might be things that you think you need to click on. Go type it into the browser manually, and you're going to be way more safe than sorry.
Well, I definitely think too it's a learned behavior about not clicking. I mean, they're really good at preying on people. Hey, your long lost high school girlfriend wants to speak to you again, or something like that, where they really kind of prey on things that you might be interested in. And it's a learned behavior, and it takes practice, but the goal is to just make sure that if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And we need to watch out for that.
Right. And to that note, it's definitely a learned behavior. For a number of our clients who are on our managed security program, we have a training program and a phishing testing program. So all of that sends out recurring monthly, semi-monthly, bi-monthly, whatever we say, phishing tests. So we're ensuring that not only have we trained the staff, but we're testing to make sure that they're not clicking on links that they shouldn't be clicking on. And when they do, they get retrained. So it's a real easy way to see who's doing what, how it's working out, who's getting, who the training is sticking with and who they're not. So it's really great, whether it's us or anybody, but to have a training program and a testing program in place, because this is the starting point. And so like Bob said, it's definitely a learned habit, and it's definitely changing your mindset and how you view technology and how you use technology, to the extent that I can throw out there an example. Yesterday, I got an email from somebody that was actually somebody made a donation in my name for Father's Day, and it took me a while to figure out that it was actually real. And I thought, this is new. I've never seen this place. I don't know what's going on. And it took a while to actually, figure out that it was actually a real email. But again, that's the mentality. That's, a defensive posture that we should have. And it's unfortunate, but it's going to protect us if we have that sort of mentality. So that being said, number 3, never enter any information in a website if it's not secure. So what does secure mean? Well, if you ever look at in the URL of a browser, you're going to see either HTTP colon or HTTPS, and in Chrome there might be a lock on an HTTPS that shows up. Sometimes this is all driven by certificates within the website, so they may be HTTPS, which is a secure site, and it knows that it's secure because there's a certificate behind it. Sometimes the certificate has expired and you'll see the lock with a red sign instead of a green sign. All of that stuff is stuff to be aware of. If you're ever at a website that you need to enter information into and it's not HTTPS, do not enter information into it. Because what that means is it's not secure. It means that the information that you're typing is being transmitted over the internet in clear text, which means everything you're typing anybody can see. So it's just one rule of thumb. Never, ever enter information into a website if it's not secure. So it needs to have an S, and lock needs to show, and the lock needs to be green. So that's a huge rule of thumb there. So again, if anybody has any questions as we're going through these things, please feel free to raise your hand and let us know. I'm just double checking to make sure we don't have any at the moment, but yeah, so as I go through these things, please feel free to raise a hand and let us know if you have a specific question about that. Going on, number 4, I feel like David Letterman's top 10 here. Browsing in incognito or private browsing mode. So what this means is some of the browsers, especially Chrome is incognito, Microsoft, Internet Explorer, Edge have private browsing mode. So what this means is literally they cut out all the information that's being transmitted back to the web host, whether it's that host or any retargeting that's going on, any cookies that you've written, all of that information, all your browsing habits that get transmitted out there into the world, because the reality is everything that you're doing on a website is getting transmitted back to that host. And if it's any sort of public-facing website where there are ads that are being served up from all these different ad services, all of that information about which, how far you've scrolled, what you've clicked on, what pages you go through, everything that you do gets sent out to all of those companies. So browsing in incognito mode puts you into a private standing, and none of that information gets transmitted out there. So again, that's a really safe way to be sitting on the internet, is to be working in a browser with incognito or private mode. Number 5, don't leave your data behind. Again, this seems like an overly simplistic thing, but it does go to habits and building up the right habits. So, for instance, a lot of times when you're browsing or when you're traveling, you may go to a business center and work on that business computer. When you do that, don't leave behind your data, right? So remember to log out of that computer. Make sure that when you log out, click on the back button to double check that you really did log out, okay? Because if you log out and then you click on the back button and you get to that previous page, because some sites aren't very good at logging you out, it's really important that somebody who takes over the machine after you doesn't have all of your information. So what I like to do is not only log out, but then I go into the history of that browser and clear it, so that none of my history is sitting in that browser for the next person to use or have access to if they know what they're doing. Similar to that, if you use any sort of syncing programs like Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, any syncing program stores data, stores information on your local machine. So when you're making changes to things, it's actually getting saved onto your machine. So if you happen to log into Box from a shared computer, some of that information might get saved to that machine. If you download something when you're working on again, a shared machine, that information gets saved into the downloads folder. So if you don't go back to that place and delete out that file, and here's the thing, if you delete it, it's just going to move it into the deleted folder. You actually need to hold the shift key down and delete it so that it permanently deletes that file from that computer. So again, these are all habits, good habits to get into in terms of how you use the computer and how you make sure that your information doesn't hang out. So all of this is really important. Again, when you're thinking about if you're a mobile user, if you're working on a shared computer like at a business center, if you're working in like an internet cafe, all of that sort of information is left around. Similar to that is when you're using like your laptop or some other portable device, thinking about how do you structure and how do you lock down your profiles in case you lose that machine, right? So that's really important. Again, not necessarily from an online perspective, but it is important from a data security perspective. So it's something to just keep in mind as you're working on your machines out there. So moving on, number 6, when you are in a public network, right, always make sure that you're logged in via VPN. If you're sharing a public connection, if you're at Corner Bakery and using their public Wi-Fi, or you're at Starbucks, or you're anywhere where you're on a guest network, if that guest network doesn't have a secure connection, if you don't have to put in a password, everything that you're typing in is available to anybody in that internet connection, and anybody outside of that, within physical proximity can be sitting there snooping in and sniffing your information. So whatever you're doing, that information can be hacked real easily on public Wi-Fi. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you have a VPN connection, whether it's there's VPNs like Viper or Cisco Umbrella. These are things that we have installed on our clients' remote machines, on our remote machines, to make sure that you have a secure connection over these internet connections, to make sure that when you're browsing on the internet, even on a public Wi-Fi, it's secure and your information is encrypted. Not even if their Wi-Fi is not encrypted, if you have a VPN connection to their Wi-Fi, you're now sending encrypted information over it. So again, really important to make sure that you're secure in how you go about browsing.
For me, this is definitely one of the most important points because everybody has the mentality now of, hey, let's jump on the Wi-Fi, try to save on our cellular bill when we can. But the truth is when you log into a network and they don't ask for a password, you pretty much opened a door into your world. And I don't think people appreciate that. I think especially the younger crowd doesn't appreciate that. But you really have to be careful where you connect yourself and how you connect yourself, because what you're doing is opening yourself up in a major way. And it's really important that you recognize that and that you know when you do log into unsecured networks, this is a big liability for you.
Yeah, so really important. Again, some of these things to me are pretty second nature. To anybody in IT, pretty second nature. To most other people who are not in IT, either it's, oh my God, that's such a pain in the butt, I don't know if I can do that. Seems like such a hassle. Nobody wants my information, so it kind of doesn't matter. Again, all of these are things that we want to change the mindset. We want, everybody that we know and care about to really be thinking about how do we operate in this new paradigm so that we're as secure as possible. And again, it becomes work habits. Once you have the VPN installed and you know how to connect up, it's just one click, real easy to do, not a big deal. But it's just remembering to do it and making it a habit. So that being said, something really simple is lock your phone. So again, this might not be exactly online specific, but it's really surprising how many people have iPhones and Android phones and other phones where it's too much of a hassle to lock the phone, right? My lock is set to the minimal time, 1 minute. Period, end of story. Like, I don't even want to think about anybody being able to unlock my phone or get to my phone or get to any of my information, both because of personal as well as business. So this is one of the easiest things to protect yourself with is how many times do you lose your phone or leave it around or somebody can get into it. So locking your phone is huge. Another little tidbit, cover your webcam. So this is something, again, that doesn't seem second nature. Might seem like not that big a deal. But on every laptop, there's a camera right in the top center. And the thing is it's real easy to get that hacked. It's really easy for somebody to take over your camera without you knowing it and without you ever knowing it. So every device that I have that has a camera on it, I have a piece of tape or some sort of cover over the webcam. Certainly for my kids, every one of theirs is protected.
Yeah, this actually came to light a couple of years ago. There was a picture of Mark Zuckerberg at his desk, and there was a piece of tape over his laptop. And I think, if the head of Facebook wants to tape up his laptop, I think that goes to show that we all should be following his lead. If he's concerned about it, we should be concerned. And the webcam should always be covered if it's not in use.
Yeah, again, these are all real easy things, but all they're going to do is help protect you. So last but not least, we have manage your passwords. So this can be a whole webinar just in and of itself, but we'll try to stay on point here and walk through the most important aspects of this. So thinking about managing your passwords, let's drill that down and peel it apart. One, don't use simple passwords. If your password is password or password123 or birthday, kid's day, kid's birthday, my kids' names, my first pet, these are all things that people can guess and get into. And the reality is the more complex you make it, the harder it is for people not only to guess, but the reality is most of the time hacking involves a machine. It involves a program that's looking at every combination. And so the easier the combination is, the easier it is to get into your systems. So simply put, change your passwords to be special character, upper lowercase, letters, and numbers, all of those things, regardless of any of the other things that we're going to talk about. That's just sort of baseline of what it should be. People have talked about, well, let's change it to a passphrase. And a passphrase is something like, I like going to the beach on Fridays, right? Something that's long and easy to remember, but difficult because there's so many letters in it that it's harder to break. Now, when you're managing, 100 different sites that you have to log into, it's pretty difficult to keep that different across all your different sites. So passphases are a great concept. I don't see them as being sort of as accepted and used as much as when the concept was first released. So there, I think it's important to stay with, don't use simple passwords, make them complex. And we can talk a little bit more as some of these other points come up. So number 2 to that is don't use the same password, right? That's really incredibly important. So, and that's kind of the difficult thing, given everything that's going on, is with all the passwords that we have to remember, it's really hard to create complex passwords that have special characters, upper lowercase letters, and numbers, and remember them all. So we end up getting lazy and reusing passwords across different accounts. And the problem with that is that when we're doing that and you get breached and your LinkedIn password ends up on the dark web, odds are you don't remember what the other accounts were that you used the same password for. And so all the hackers do is take that set of usernames and passwords and apply it to everything that they're trying to get into. Then they get into some other portal that you have. Now you might say, well, I don't really care if somebody logs into my LinkedIn account. They can't really do much damage. Well, the issue isn't what can they do with your profile. The issue is there any other pieces of information that you have in there that maybe they can get to and do something with, right? So for me, they might not, I might not care about somebody changing my LinkedIn profile, but if I have my credit card information stored in there, somebody might be able to get to that. Somebody might be able to do something with that. Somebody might be able to set up another account based on that password information and based on that credit card information. So all of these things, it's just a slippery slope to get to other pieces of information.
Yeah, this one is really an important one, as Craig said, because the statistics show that individuals use the same passwords in their personal life as they do in their business life. So, in Craig's example where he said maybe people don't want in your LinkedIn, that might be true, but if they turn around and use that same password and trying to log into something that might be more important, for instance, your company's, network domain, suddenly you've opened yourself up to a situation where that password in your personal life has now affected your business. And so it's really important that you mitigate that by not using the same passwords in any case, but most importantly, you're not sharing passwords in your personal life with your business life, because that's one way the hackers are going to really try and work that system. If they get a couple of your passwords, they're going to try and log in everywhere they can. And it's so you got to be careful there.
Yeah, so what does that mean, right? So on top of that, what we like to say is don't use Facebook to log into other websites, right? So oftentimes when you set up a new account, nowadays they say, well, log in using your Google account or log in using your Facebook account. Just not a big believer on having these other backdoors and connections based on whether it's Facebook or some other portal. Again, we want to make things as difficult as possible down the road should something happen to your information, right? And if you're connected to all these other portals through one main portal, it just makes it that much easier if something were to happen. So really want to set up good habits, good browsing habits, like we like to say, internet hygiene. So that being said, one of the more important ones too is setting up dual-factor authentication. So this is the capability of integrating another device into your login, whether it's your phone or a tablet or an email address. But when you log in and having them send you a code is, again, exponentially more secure in securing your password and your login information than just using a username and password. So wherever you can, set up dual-factor authentication. So if you have an app for your banking information, set up dual-factor for that app. If you have, if you're logging into your bank account via a browser, make sure you're using dual-factor. All of these things, again, from a day-to-day perspective, if you're not used to it, the big pushback is, boy, it's really a hassle. Every time I log in, I have to type in a number. Or every time I log in, I have to have my phone around me. All of those sorts of things. I don't have an easy answer around, yes, it's a hassle. But the reality is again, once it becomes a habit, it's not that much more of a hassle. It's an extra 2 seconds. But for instance, we have dual factor set up on our network here. What does that mean? Well, literally, when I log into my computer here locally, I get pinged on my phone so that I have to log in and type in a number or click OK. So, yeah, is that a hassle? Do I have to have my phone around me all the time? The reality is I pretty much have my phone around me all the time anyway. And from a comfort level, I know that my account is set up with my phone and no other phone is. And so when I log in and I get that dual factor buzz on my phone, I know for a fact that there's nobody else logging into my network as me. It's just impossible. It's not going to happen. So having that sort of dual factor protection on your accounts wherever you can is just huge. That, again, adds to an exponential level of security around your accounts.
And this is a big one that FPA has been pushing to our clients. And what it is, we start with like we said, the user education and try not to get those passwords out there. But if in worst case that password does get out there, the dual factor is that next line of defense. So best case, we don't get the passwords out there. But if they do happen to get out there, we have something else in place that will stop that threat pretty much immediately. Because obviously you're not going to authenticate a notification when you're not trying to log into your account. So we can say pretty confidently, when you have dual factor set up, we can pretty much determine whether or not who's logging in, and people aren't getting in when they shouldn't. So it's a really important one that FPA has really been focused on recently.
And so the last bullet point under manager passwords, I think is one of the most important ones. Given that you don't want to use simple passwords, given that you don't want to use the same password across accounts, given that you don't want to set up accounts that use Facebook or some other portal to log into their portal, all of those make dealing with usernames and passwords and logging into systems that much more difficult. Well, how do you get around that? How do you manage that? How do you really run that in a most efficient and effective way? I would say without a doubt, use a password management system. So what we mean by that is an actual password management system that you pay for on an annual recurring basis to manage all of your passwords and integrate in with your browser and all of your apps. So something like LastPass or Dashlane or something like that. My personal preference is Dashlane. That's what I use. That's what a number of us use here. Some also use LastPass. You can integrate this in so that you never have to remember any other password other than your main one to log in with, which is beautiful. It's integrated with Chrome browsers, with Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge. It integrates with Safari. It integrates on your iPhone or your Android device, all of those things. So literally, I have complex passwords across every login that I have, and I've got hundreds. And don't have to remember any of them because it's all integrated in with my systems. It's all stored in 256-bit encryption. All of this information is secure. It's probably one of the most important aspects of all of this. I would say without a doubt, password management system and really getting it dialed in and integrated. One, adds the most effective security to manage your usernames and passwords, and two, makes your life incredibly easy. So I don't have to remember any passwords. Everything is integrated. It's really, really a beautiful thing. There aren't that many things these days that get me really excited in the technology world. A lot of it has become kind of mundane. But a password management system, every time I log in and don't have to think about the password, when I logged into GoToWebinar to set it up, I had my password system log me in. Again, it's a beautiful thing. It makes life so much easier. To that extent, one of the benefits that we offer our staff here is we pay for our staff to have a password management system. So annually, every one of our staff utilize a password management system, and to us, it's that important that it's a benefit that FPA pays for our staff. We believe that strongly in it. So those are the 10 items. What I will say is these are all, I don't want to say equally important, but really these are all about work habits. And I will say one more thing before we open it up to Q&A. I know that we're coming up on the 1 o'clock time here, but we're wrapping it up right now. We've got one extra bonus bullet point. So may or may not be directly related to your online security, but those of you with kids, something that we think is really important is to set up social media accounts for yourself so that you can monitor what your kids are doing out there. I don't know, my wife and I are obviously very technology savvy. So everything that our kids are doing, we're pretty well aware of. And it's really interesting to talk to other parents who aren't in the technology field to really see and experience what it's like to parent when you don't understand technology and you don't really use it. Because it is such a black hole and your kids are out there doing things. And so, set up a Twitter account, Instagram, Snapchat, Reddit, right? Most adults have Facebook and LinkedIn. And the reason I said Facebook and LinkedIn are for grown-ups is that's the way kids view it. It's really interesting because Facebook actually started out for kids, started out for colleges, was originally written in Harvard, and then it branched out to all the colleges, and then ultimately parents took it over. Adults took it over. So the kids are going to other places. They're going to Snapchat, Reddit, Instagram, right? All of this stuff, disposable content, seeing what your kids are posting, when they're posting, all the emotional baggage that goes on with all of this stuff. It's just a completely different paradigm out there. And so if you have kids, whether they're 6 or 16, I would say get on there, set up a social media account, friend them, tell them that you're going to be aware of what's going on, and make sure that you have a good dialogue with them. So number 1 is set up the accounts. Number 2 is learn the platforms, really understand it. And number 3 is friend your kids. So I think those are really, really important things to think about, and that's why we throw this on there as an extra added bonus, not necessarily around how to protect yourself, but it is important to understand how to protect your family and how to protect your kids. And really, again, if you're not into technology and you're not up on social media, there's a whole nother conduit, a whole nother paradigm, a whole nother life that's going on there that your kids are having that you may not be aware of. And I think that's hugely important. So there you have it. These were 10 ways, maybe 11, to stay safe online. So one last note is let's take cybersecurity seriously because the criminals are. So We hope that this was beneficial for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Haven't had any to date. So far, it's been relatively quiet. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I hope that this was valuable and beneficial to you, and we hope to talk to you soon. Any questions?
Okay. Okay, well, that wraps about things up. So we just want to say thanks for attending. We hope that this has been informative and of value to you. We certainly enjoyed putting it on. Please let us know if you have any further questions or would like to talk to Craig or myself about your specific security situation. For more information about us, please check out our website, www.fpainc.com, or send us an email or just give us a call. Of course, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Our next webinar in the series is going to be about improving productivity using Microsoft OneNote and Outlook, something we feel could benefit many people out there. That webinar should be in a few weeks, so look for the invitation on that one soon. Thanks again for attending, and we hope you have a great day.